So thank you so much for having me here today, especially to Janice for inviting me out. It's a rather bizarre situation finding yourself locked out on the other side of a border alone, thinking that the entire state is against you, but to be called up by some people that still represent freedom of speech and the values that I thought the UK was founded on. To be called up by you and invited here to speak freely is an absolute pleasure, and it's good to know there are some good people who still hold those values in the United Kingdom, and it's not all lost. But to get into what happened to me, on Sunday night I got on a bus from Belgium to head towards Calais to go over to Dover and into the UK. And I was stopped by the UK border police, who asked me to take my bags off of that bus and bring them in. And they began to search my bags and put me in a detention center. I figured that this situation might be comparable to the situation with American journalist Brittany Pettibone and activist Martin Zellner from Austria, where they were detained and actually put in prison for 3 days due to their political opinions. However, a little bit into my detention, they handed me over to the UK Kent police, and an officer came into the room and handed me this information leaflet, which says, Schedule 7 Terrorism Act. And they told me that I'm now being detained under the Schedule 7 Terrorism Act. Here's what I need to know. I do not have effectively any rights, at least for the first hour. I do not even have the right to remain silent. I was brought into a small questioning room, one that you might see in the movies with the little tape recorder on the table, and they began to question me on all manner of things, beginning with, how would I describe myself politically? What is a nationalist? They moved on to, are you religious? How religious are you? Christian, how far Christian are you? Yes, I am Christian. I am not a Christian extremist of any sort. And it got very strange when they moved on to the question after that, where they said, how do you feel about people running trucks into individuals to kill them, specifically Muslims? To which I nearly laughed, not because I think that's a funny matter at all, but to think that myself, a young Christian woman from Canada, who has never been part of any terrorist organization, I've never endorsed any terrorist organization, I have no criminal record whatsoever, I'm sitting in a room with the Kent police being asked how I feel about running over Muslims with trucks. It was just absolutely absurd. Now, after that, they asked me how I felt about right-wing terrorism, to which I once again told them, you can watch any of my social media, you can look at any of my videos online, not once have I endorsed terrorism. I think it is a horrific, evil thing, no matter who it comes from. The right, the left, Muslims, Christians, does not matter. And there was no point which they told me why I was detained under Schedule 7. Whether they suspected me of terrorism, none of it. There was no reason given. After 6 hours of being held, they ended the investigation. And I will mention that the Kent police are perfectly lovely people. I assume that these orders came from above to ask me these questions and to detain me under Schedule 7, the Terrorism Act. After being detained for 6 hours, they gave me a form, and it says here, you have asked for leave to enter the United Kingdom as a visitor for up to 5 days. However, by your own admission, on the 24th of February 2018, you were involved in the distribution of racist material in Luton. I believe that your actions whilst in the United Kingdom present a threat to the fundamental interests of society and to the public policy of the United Kingdom. The event that they are referring to is an event that I never at any point said or admitted to being racist material. It was a social experiment I was doing with a few people in Luton, referring to a Vice article claiming Jesus Christ may have been a gay man. We decided to do a spin-off and see how the public would react to other religions being called gay or LGBT religions. So we came out with signs pretended to be left-wing presenters and said, Allah is a gay god. Allah is a god for gays and homosexuals as well. To which the police confiscated our material. I never violated any laws. I cooperated with them. And yet, I guess I got the end of my social experiment. I got the result. Vice is perfectly allowed to state Jesus Christ may be gay. If you say Allah may be gay, you get detained under Schedule 7 Terrorism Act and banned from the country for racism. What in that statement has to do with race, I cannot tell you. It seems more like the UK is bringing back ancient blasphemy laws. That's what this seems like. The great shame here, of course, as unfortunate as it is that my friends were put in prison effectively for 3 days, that I was detained and banned from a country, as great shame as that is, the greater shame here is that I worry that the United Kingdom, which does face problems from extremism, does genuinely face problems from radical Islam and Islamic terrorism, they are getting to a point where people will no longer be able to question the problems introduced here. I am a Canadian citizen, a part of the Commonwealth. I speak the language. I love the culture. I love the UK in general. I came in legally. I intended to stay for the amount of time that I said I would stay. I had booked a hotel with my own money, and I posed no threat, have no criminal record. And yet the Kent Police's time was used to detain me and to question me on these things. The great shame is that not only is free speech being curtailed, but people who are coming in illegally with genuinely radical views are being overlooked. You have the police ignoring situations like the one in Telford, where young girls are being assaulted and raped because they are too afraid of being called racist or Islamophobic, whereas they aren't afraid of being called anti-Christian or anti-white because they ask me whether I'm going to, how I feel about running cars into people. They aren't afraid of this. So it seems the UK has their priorities utterly out of control, utterly out of order. And I think it's a wonderful thing that we've been brought together today to question that and to challenge what the UK is focusing and spending their money on, because there are genuine problems with extremism, there are genuine issues that need to be investigated by the police, but a young Canadian girl coming in to visit her friends is not one of them.
Thank you very much.